I never thought I'd be the woman standing in a courthouse, watching the man I'd loved for 32 years be led away in handcuffs. But then again, I never thought I'd walk into my own bedroom and find him in bed with Sarah. Sarah. My daughter-in-law. My son Michael's wife. The woman who called me mom and brought me flowers every Sunday. The worst part? It wasn't the first time. And when I finally found the courage to speak up, to shatter the perfect facade we'd all been living behind, everyone told me I was the problem. That I was vindictive. Jealous. A bitter old woman who couldn't accept that her time had passed. But here's what they didn't know, I had evidence. Months of it. And when the court finally heard my story, really heard it, everything changed. This is how a 32-year marriage ended. This is how a family imploded. And this is how I learned that sometimes, the only way to save yourself is to burn everything down. Let me take you back to the beginning. Not the beginning of the affair, we'll get there, but the beginning of me. My name is Patricia. I'm 58 years old. I live in a modest 3-bedroom house in suburban Connecticut, the kind with a white picket fence and a garden I've tended for decades. On paper, my life looked perfect. A successful husband, Robert, a financial consultant who made good money and came home every night. A son who'd grown into a kind, decent man. A beautiful daughter-in-law who seemed to adore our family. But here's the thing about perfect facades, they're exhausting to maintain. Robert and I met in college. I was 23, studying elementary education. He was 25, already interning at a finance firm, already ambitious. He had this way of looking at me like I was the only person in the room. Back then, I thought that meant love. Now I know it just meant he was good at focus when he wanted something. We married young. Had Michael 2 years later. And for a long time. 25 years, maybe more, we were happy. Or at least, I thought we were. Robert worked long hours, but he provided. I taught 2nd grade, raised our son, hosted dinner parties, volunteered at the church. We had date nights every Friday. We took vacations to Cape Cod every summer. We had inside jokes and comfortable silences and the kind of partnership that makes other couples envious. When did it start to crack? I couldn't tell you an exact date. It was gradual, the way a foundation settles and shifts until one day you notice the doors don't close quite right anymore. Robert started working later. Coming home at 9, 10 at night. Weekend golf trips became more frequent. His phone, always face down now. Always password protected. When I asked about his day, his answers grew shorter. Vaguer. Just work, Patty. You know how it is. I did know. Or I thought I did. I told myself this was just middle age. Marriage at 30 years. The comfortable drift into separate orbits. I threw myself into my teaching, into my garden, into book club and volunteering. I told myself I was fine. And then Michael met Sarah. Sarah entered our lives like spring sunshine after a long winter. That's how I thought of her then, brightness personified. Michael brought her home for Thanksgiving 5 years ago. She was 26 to his 28. Petite, with honey blonde hair and these enormous green eyes that made her look perpetually surprised and delighted by the world. She worked as a dental hygienist, loved hiking and photography, and laughed at all of Robert's terrible dad jokes. I loved her immediately. She wasn't like Michael's previous girlfriends, the quiet, bookish types he usually gravitated toward. Sarah was vivacious. Outgoing. She filled rooms with her energy. And she seemed so genuinely interested in our family. She asked me for my recipes. She wanted to hear stories about Michael's childhood. She asked Robert about his work with what seemed like authentic fascination. "You're so lucky," my friend Diane told me after meeting her. "A daughter-in-law who actually wants to be part of the family? That's rare." They married 2 years later, a small ceremony in a vineyard in Napa Valley. I cried during the vows. Happy tears. my son had found someone wonderful. Our family was growing. Everything felt right. Sarah started coming over every Sunday. She'd bring pastries from this French bakery she loved, and we'd have coffee in my kitchen while Michael and Robert watched whatever game was on. She called me Mom within the first year. She asked my opinion on everything from paint colors to career decisions. She sent me silly memes throughout the week, little inside jokes that made me feel like we had our own relationship, separate from her marriage to Michael. I thought of her as the daughter I never had. Robert seemed to adore her too. He lit up when she was around, the way he used to light up for me in those early years. He'd put his arm around her shoulders, tease her affectionately, offer to help with things around her and Michael's apartment. She's good for him, he told me once. Michael needs someone who can pull him out of his head. I agreed. I thought we were the luckiest family in the world. I should have known better. I should have seen it. But hindsight is cruel like that, it makes you feel stupid for missing what now seems so obvious. The first sign came about 18 months after their wedding. It was a Tuesday evening in March. I remember because my tulips were just starting to bloom, and I'd spent the afternoon planting new bulbs for next year. Robert came home at his usual late hour, around 9:30. I was in the living room, grading papers while half watching some home improvement show. He walked past me to the kitchen without his usual greeting. When he returned with a glass of water, I noticed his shirt was untucked on one side. His collar looked wrinkled. And there was something, a smell. Not perfume exactly. Something sweeter. Younger. Long day? I asked. Client dinner ran late, he said, not meeting my eyes. I'm exhausted. Going to bed. It was 9:45. I told myself I was being paranoid. People get tired. Shirts get wrinkled. But I couldn't shake this feeling. This tiny seed of doubt that had planted itself in my gut. I started paying closer attention. The late nights became more frequent. 3-4 times a week. Always client dinners or meetings that ran over. His phone habits became more secretive. He'd take calls in the garage or the backyard. When I walked into a room while he was texting, he'd quickly switch apps or turn the screen off. Who are you talking to? I asked once, trying to sound casual. Just work stuff. God, Patty, do you need to know every detail? The defensiveness was new. Robert had never been defensive before. I tried to talk to myself out of it. This is what affairs look like, yes, but it's also what stress looks like. Maybe there were problems at work he wasn't telling me about. Maybe he was planning something, a surprise for our anniversary, a trip. I made excuses because the alternative was too terrifying to consider. But then came the Sunday that changed everything. It was early April. Sarah had texted me that morning, running late, be there around 11 instead of 10. With a little coffee emoji and a heart. Michael had already told me he had a work emergency, some server crash that required him to go into the office. Tell Sarah I'll be back by 2, he'd said. Sorry, Mom. I'll make it up to you guys next week. Robert was supposedly at the gym. His new Sunday morning routine started about a month earlier. Getting back in shape, he'd told me, patting his slight middle-aged stomach. Sitting at a desk all week is killing me. So I was alone when Sarah arrived at 11:15, carrying her usual bag of pastries and wearing workout clothes, black leggings and an oversized sweatshirt. Sorry I'm late, she said, kissing my cheek. My morning Pilates class ran over. We settled in the kitchen like always. I made coffee. She told me about a difficult patient at work, about plans she and Michael had to hike Mount Washington in the summer, about a photography class she was thinking of taking. Everything seemed normal. Perfect, even. Where's Robert? She asked, maybe 20 minutes into our visit. The gym, I said. He should be back any minute. You know how he is with his new fitness kick. Something flickered across her face. Just for a second. A micro-expression I couldn't quite read. Surprise? Concern? It was gone before I could place it. Oh, she said. Right. The gym. We kept talking, but I noticed she checked her phone 3 times in the next 10 minutes. Quick glances. Almost nervous. Robert came home at noon, slightly sweaty in his gym clothes, carrying his water bottle. "There's my girl," he said when he saw Sarah, pulling her into a hug. My girl. He'd never called me that. Not in 32 years. I watched them. Really watched them. The way she fit against his side. The way his hand lingered on her lower back. The way they both seemed just slightly too comfortable, too familiar. And then I saw it. When Robert pulled back from the hug, adjusting his gym bag, I noticed something on his neck. Just below his ear. A small mark. Reddish-purple. About the size of a dime. A hickey. My 56-year-old husband had a hickey on his neck. The room tilted. My coffee cup felt suddenly too heavy in my hand. Sarah was talking about something. Her Pilates class, maybe, or the weather, and Robert was responding, and everything looked so normal. But I couldn't hear them anymore. There was this rushing sound in my ears, like standing too close to the ocean. I excused myself. Told them I needed to check on something in the garden. Walked outside on legs that felt like they weren't quite attached to my body. I stood in my garden, among my tulips and my daffodils, and I tried to convince myself I was wrong. Maybe he'd bumped into something at the gym. Maybe it was a rash. Maybe I was a crazy, suspicious wife jumping to conclusions. But I knew. Deep down, in that place where women always know, I knew. I didn't confront him. Not that day. Not that week. Instead, I became someone I didn't recognize. Someone calculating. Someone who observed and documented and planned. I started keeping track. Every late night. Every unexplained absence. Every Sunday when Robert disappeared during Sarah's visits. To run an errand, to take a work call, to check something in the garage. I noticed patterns. When Michael traveled for work, he was in sales, gone 2 or 3 days every few weeks. Robert's client dinners increased. Sarah's Sunday visits sometimes extended into the afternoon, with her staying even after Michael got back, helping me with gardening or learning to make my lasagna recipe. I started finding evidence. Small things, easy to dismiss individually but damning in accumulation. A receipt for flowers from a boutique I'd never heard of. When I asked about them, Robert said they were for a colleague's birthday. But the receipt showed 2 dozen roses, $60 worth. That's not colleague flowers. That's romance. A charge on our credit card for a hotel in Hartford. Hartford, where we lived. Why would he need a hotel in our own city? Company booked it for a client meeting, he said. You know how they are about not wanting people drinking and driving after these things. Maybe. Maybe. But then I found the texts. It was late May. Robert was in the shower. His phone was on the nightstand, and it buzzed with a message. I shouldn't have looked. I knew I shouldn't have looked. But I did. The notification preview showed, Sarah, tomorrow at 2? Same place? My hand shook as I picked up the phone. It was locked, but I knew his passcode. I'd seen him type it 100 times. Our wedding anniversary. 09171992. I opened the messages. Sarah's name was saved as S in his contacts. Just the letter S. And the messages, God, the messages. They'd deleted most of them. I could see gaps in the conversation, places where multiple messages must have been erased. But they'd missed some. Enough. S, I miss you already. When can I see you? Robert, Tuesday afternoon. I'll tell P I have a site visit. P, I was P. My own husband referred to me as a single letter. S. What if she finds out? Robert, she won't. She never pays attention anymore. Too busy with her students and her garden. Too busy with my students and my garden. My job. My passion. The things I'd poured myself into while he was. I scrolled further back, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. Robert, you're incredible. I haven't felt this alive in years. Do you think you'll ever tell her? Leave? Robert, not yet. The timing isn't right. But soon. I promise. Soon. He was planning to leave me. For my daughter-in-law. For my son's wife. I heard the shower turn off. My hands moved automatically, closing the messages, putting the phone back exactly where I'd found it. I was in bed, eyes closed, pretending to sleep when Robert came out of the bathroom. He climbed into bed beside me. Kissed my forehead. Love you, Patty, he murmured. I didn't respond. I lay there in the dark, listening to his breathing even out, and I plotted. I couldn't tell Michael. Not yet. Not without absolute proof. What kind of mother tells her son that his wife is sleeping with his father based on some deleted text messages and a hickey? He'd think I was insane. Jealous. Having some kind of psychological break. I needed more. I needed undeniable evidence. So I became a detective. I ordered a small recording device online, disguised as a USB drive. I waited until Robert was at work, then I carefully placed it in his car, tucked under the passenger seat. I started tracking our credit cards obsessively, creating a spreadsheet of every suspicious charge. Hotels. Restaurants I'd never heard of. Flowers. A jewelry purchase, a bracelet, I discovered later, that Sarah started wearing 3 weeks after the charge appeared. I created a fake social media account and followed both of them. Sarah posted photos constantly, her and Michael at dinner, at the movies, hiking. Perfect couple photos. But she also posted photos of coffee shops, of city streets, of random moments throughout her day. I started cross-referencing them with Robert's location. The coffee shop she posted from at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday? 3 blocks from a hotel we'd been charged for that same afternoon. I felt insane. Obsessive. Paranoid. But I wasn't wrong. And then, in mid-June, I got the break I needed. Michael called me on a Monday morning. He sounded excited. Mom, I got promoted. Regional manager. It's a huge deal. Oh sweetheart, that's wonderful. I gushed, meaning it. My son had worked so hard for this. There's a catch though, he continued. I have to go to San Francisco for training. 2 weeks. I leave Thursday. 2 weeks. Michael would be gone for 2 weeks. That's fine, honey. You'll do great. Can you check in on Sarah while I'm gone? He asked. She gets lonely when I travel. Maybe have her over for dinner a few times? Of course, I said, my mind already racing. I'll take good care of her. After we hung up, I sat very still at my kitchen table, staring at my coffee cup. This was it. This was my opportunity. I told Robert that Wednesday evening that I was going to visit my sister in Boston for a long weekend. My sister Linda had been asking me to come up for months. I'm leaving Friday morning, I said over dinner. I'll be back Monday evening. Is that okay? Sure, Robert said, barely looking up from his phone. I've got a busy weekend anyway. Some client stuff. Client stuff. Right. Will you be okay on your own? I asked, playing the dutiful wife. I'm a grown man, Patty. I think I can handle 3 days without you. The condescension in his voice. When had he started talking to me like that? I packed on Thursday night. Made a show of loading my suitcase into my car Friday morning. Kissed Robert goodbye at 8 a.m. Have fun with Linda, he said. Tell her I said hi. I drove to my school. It was summer break, the parking lot was empty. I parked in the back corner where my car wouldn't be visible from the road. And then I waited. At 10:30 a.m., I drove back home. Slowly. Carefully. I parked 2 blocks away, on a side street. Our house looked exactly as I'd left it. Robert's car was in the driveway. The curtains were drawn in the bedroom, something he never did during the day. I sat in my car for an hour. Waiting. Watching. At 11:45, a blue Honda Civic pulled up to our house. Sarah's car. She didn't park in the driveway. She parked on the street, 3 houses down. She got out wearing a sundress I'd never seen before, yellow, pretty, summer casual. She looked around before walking up to our front door. She had a key. I watched her use a key to let herself into my house. The door closed behind her. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I gave them 15 minutes. 15 minutes to get comfortable. To think they were safe. Then I drove the 2 blocks home. Parked in the driveway right behind Robert's car. Walked up to my own front door with my hands shaking so badly I could barely get my key in the lock. The living room was empty. So was the kitchen. I could hear sounds from upstairs. Music playing. And other sounds. The kind of sounds that made my stomach turn. I climbed the stairs. Each step felt like walking through concrete. Our bedroom door was partially open. And there they were. I will never forget that image. It's burned into my brain like someone took a photograph and tattooed it onto my consciousness. My husband of 32 years. In our bed. The bed we'd shared for decades. The bed where our son was conceived. The bed where I'd nursed him through the flu, where we'd eaten breakfast on Sunday mornings, where we'd watched movies and talked about retirement and grown old together. And Sarah. My daughter-in-law. The girl who called me mom. Who I'd welcomed into my family, into my heart, into my life. They didn't hear me at first. The music was too loud. Some song I didn't recognize. Too caught up in each other to notice me standing in the doorway. Get out. My voice didn't sound like mine. It came from somewhere deeper, somewhere primal. Pure rage made sound. They sprang apart like they'd been electrocuted. Sarah screamed. Robert scrambled for the sheets. Patty, he started. Get out. Sarah was crying, grabbing for her clothes. Patricia, please, I can explain. Explain? I laughed, and it sounded hysterical even to my own ears. You're going to explain to me why you're fucking my husband in my bed? Mom, please, she called me mom. She actually called me mom in that moment. Don't you dare call me that. Don't you dare. Robert found his voice. Patty, calm down. Let's talk about this rationally. Rationally. He wanted rational. I walked to my nightstand. Opened the drawer. Pulled out my phone. What are you doing? Robert asked, his voice sharp now. Worried. Calling Michael. He should know his wife is a cheating whore and his father is a... No. Sarah lunged at me, trying to grab the phone. Please, please don't tell Michael. Please, Patricia. It was a mistake. It just happened, we didn't mean. It just happened? I yanked my arm away from her. Just happened? How many times? How many times? Silence. They looked at each other. That look told me everything. A year, Robert finally said quietly. It's been about a year. A year. 365 days. While I cooked his dinners and washed his clothes and lay beside him in this bed. While Sarah sat in my kitchen, called me mom, accepted my love and my trust. Get out of my house, I said. My voice was flat now. Dead. Both of you. Get out right now before I call the police. The police? Robert scoffed, finding his confidence again as he pulled on his pants. For what? Adultery isn't a crime, Patty. Breaking and entering is, I said. Sarah doesn't live here. She used a key. She has no right to have to enter my home without my permission. I saw the fear flash across Sarah's face. I'll call Michael myself, Robert said. I'll tell him everything. That I'm in love with Sarah. That I want a divorce. That you threw a hysterical fit and threatened us. Do it, I said. Call him. Right now. Let's see what your son thinks of you. He didn't call. He got dressed in silence, grabbed his wallet and keys, and left. Sarah followed him, still crying, wrapped in my throw blanket because she couldn't find all her clothes. I stood alone in my bedroom and looked at my disheveled bed. At the evidence of their betrayal. Then I very calmly took out my phone and started taking pictures. The next 72 hours were the worst of my life. I called Linda. Really called her this time. Told her everything. She drove down from Boston that night and held me while I cried harder than I'd cried since my mother's funeral. You need a lawyer, she kept saying. First thing tomorrow, you need a lawyer. But I wasn't thinking about lawyers. I was thinking about Michael. About how to tell my son that his entire life had been a lie. Robert didn't come home that night. Or the next. His phone went to voicemail every time I called. Sarah blocked my number. I called Michael on Sunday. Can you come home early? I asked. There's been a family emergency. What kind of emergency? Is Dad okay? He's fine. Physically. But I really need you to come home. Please. He heard something in my voice. Mom, you're scaring me. What's going on? Just come home. I'll explain everything when you get here. He caught a red eye that night. Showed up at my door at 6 a.m. Monday morning, looking exhausted and terrified. Where's Sarah? He asked immediately. I tried calling her but she's not answering. Sit down, Michael. Mom, what's happening? You're scaring the shit out of me. I poured him coffee. Sat across from him at the kitchen table where we'd had thousands of conversations over the years. And I told him everything. He didn't believe me at first. That's insane, he said. Dad wouldn't, Sarah wouldn't. Mom, are you feeling okay? Have you been under a lot of stress? I showed him the texts I'd photographed from Robert's phone. The credit card statements I'd compiled. The recording from the car device, a conversation between Robert and Sarah from 2 weeks earlier, planning their next meetup, laughing about how oblivious I was. I showed him the pictures from Friday. The unmade bed. Sarah's clothes on my bedroom floor. Her car parked down the street. I watched my son's face crumble. Watched him age 10 years in 10 minutes. How long? He whispered. At least a year. Maybe longer. He put his head in his hands. His shoulders shook. I came around the table and held him while he cried, and I felt a rage so pure it scared me. They'd done this to my boy. His father and his wife. The two people who were supposed to love him most in the world, and they'd destroyed him. Michael moved back in with me that day. Called Sarah and told her he knew everything. The phone call lasted 3 minutes. She cried. She begged. She said it was a mistake, that she loved him, that it didn't mean anything. Then why did you do it? He asked. For a year. Why? She didn't have an answer. Robert finally called me on Tuesday. We need to talk about the house, he said. No apology. No explanation. Just business. And finances. We should get this divorce over with as quickly and cleanly as possible. Agreed, I said. My voice was ice. I assume you'll want to keep the house. That's fine. I'll move into an apartment. We can split the retirement accounts and... I'm not making this easy for you, Robert. Silence. I'm not signing anything until I talk to a lawyer. I'm not agreeing to any quick, clean divorce. You don't get to destroy a 32-year marriage and a family and then walk away without consequences. Patty, be reasonable. Reasonable? You want reasonable? You fucked our son's wife in our bed and you want me to be reasonable? It's not illegal to have an affair. No, but there are other things that are interesting. Like how Sarah had a key to our house. How she entered our property without permission. How you both lied to Michael, to me, to everyone. How you've been spending our marital assets on this affair. The hotels, the gifts, the flowers. Those expenses are nothing. I'll let a judge decide that. I'll let a judge decide everything. See you in court, Robert. I hung up. I hired the best divorce attorney in the county. Melissa Chen, a woman with a reputation for being ruthless and thorough. Our first meeting was brutal. She asked me questions I didn't want to answer. Made me relive every detail. But she was also kind, in her efficient way. You have a strong case, she said. Connecticut is a no-fault divorce state, but we can petition for sole custody of marital assets based on the dissipation of funds. The money he spent on the affair, the hotels, the gifts, that came from your joint accounts. That's marital waste. What about Sarah? I asked. Can I do anything about her? Melissa's expression turned grave. That's complicated. There are some options. It turns out, what Sarah did, what they both did, crossed more lines than just moral ones. Connecticut has some interesting laws. One of them deals with alienation of affection. It's an old law, rarely used, but it exists. Another deals with criminal conversation, essentially, adultery with a married person. But the real legal issue came down to something else entirely. Our house. The house Robert and I owned together. Sarah had entered it using a key Robert gave her without my knowledge or consent. That's potentially criminal trespass, Melissa explained. Especially because she entered for the purpose of an affair. The property was jointly owned, yes, but Robert didn't have the right to grant her unlimited access to a space you also owned without your knowledge or permission. But would a prosecutor actually pursue charges? I asked. Normally? Probably not. But... Melissa leaned forward. Your son has standing to file a civil suit against both of them. Alienation of affection. Sarah took actions that destroyed his marriage. Robert did too. They could both be held liable for damages. Michael filed suit against both Sarah and Robert in July. The papers were served at Sarah's parents' house, where she'd moved back to. At the apartment Robert had rented downtown. The lawsuit wasn't about money. Michael made that clear. It was about accountability. About making them face what they'd done in a public way, in a legal way, in a way that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. But I wanted more. I went to the police in early August. I brought everything. The photographs. The evidence of Sarah's key to my house. The dates and times I'd documented her entries. The recording device data showing her car repeatedly at my house during hours when Robert was supposedly at work. The officer who took my statement looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, I understand this is painful, but adultery isn't. I know it's not a crime. But trespassing is. Breaking and entering is. I'm filing a complaint against Sarah Mitchell for criminal trespass. She entered my property without my permission on multiple occasions for over a year. Your husband gave her access. Without my knowledge or consent. It's a jointly owned property. He didn't have unilateral right to grant her access. I want her charged. The officer looked at me for a long moment. You realize this will blow up your family even more than it already has. My family is already destroyed. I'm just making sure everyone knows who destroyed it. The DA's office initially declined to prosecute. It's a civil matter, they said. A domestic dispute. But Michael's lawsuit was proceeding. And as discovery happened, more evidence came out. Emails. More texts. Calendar entries. Evidence that Sarah and Robert had been planning their encounters, coordinating their lies, deliberately deceiving both me and Michael. And then Sarah made a mistake. In a deposition for Michael's civil suit, she was asked directly, "Did you enter the Mitchell residence at 42 Maple Street on June 16 without Mrs. Mitchell's knowledge or permission?" She could have said no. She could have invoked the Fifth Amendment. But she was nervous, flustered, and her attorney hadn't prepared her well enough. "Yes," she said. "But Robert told me it was okay. He said she was out of town." "Did Mrs. Mitchell know you had a key to her house?" I don't think so." "Did Mrs. Mitchell ever give you permission to enter her house when she wasn't present?" "Not specifically, but..." "Yes or no, Ms. Mitchell?" "No." That deposition transcript landed on the DA's desk. And the DA, a woman named Jennifer Caruso who'd made her career on prosecuting stalking and harassment cases, took a second look. "This isn't just a domestic dispute," she told me when she called me in for a meeting. "Ms. Mitchell admitted under oath to repeatedly entering your home without your permission. That's criminal trespass. And given the nature of what she was doing there, carrying on an affair with your husband, in your bed, there's an argument for it being aggravated trespass. Trespass with intent to commit another crime." "What other crime?" I asked. "Theft." She was, in essence, stealing marital assets. Every time she and your husband used your home, your bed, your electricity, your sheets, she was participating in the use of property that wasn't hers without the owner's permission. It was a stretch. Jennifer admitted it. But it was also technically true. "I can charge her," Jennifer said. "I can bring this before a grand jury and seek an indictment. But you need to understand, this will be very public. Very messy. Your whole family will be dragged through the mud." "They already dragged us through the mud," I said. "Now I'm just making sure everyone sees it." The grand jury indicted Sarah in September. 1 count of criminal trespass. 1 count of theft of services. And because Robert had facilitated it all, because he'd given her the key, because he'd covered for her and lied to me, he was charged as an accessory after the fact. The arraignment was in late September. I sat in the courtroom with Michael beside me, watching as Sarah and Robert stood before the judge. Sarah was crying. She'd lost weight. Her parents sat behind her, looking shell-shocked and angry. Her father kept glaring at me like I was the villain in this story. Robert looked composed. Expensive suit. Expensive lawyer. He didn't look at me once. The charges were read. Both entered pleas of not guilty. Bail was set low, because they weren't flight risks. A court date was set for November. As we left the courthouse, reporters were waiting. The story had leaked, it had everything: a wife catching her husband with her daughter-in-law, a family torn apart, criminal charges over an affair. "Mrs. Mitchell, why did you press charges?" one reporter shouted. "Mrs. Mitchell, do you think your husband and daughter-in-law should go to jail?" "Mrs. Mitchell, some people are saying you're vindictive. What do you say to that?" I stopped on the courthouse steps. Michael tried to pull me away, but I held up a hand. "I'm not vindictive," I said clearly. "I'm a woman who was betrayed by the 2 people she trusted most. I'm a mother watching her son's heart break. I'm a wife who gave 32 years to a man who threw it away. And yes, I'm someone who believes there should be consequences for betrayal, for lies, for violating someone's home and safety. If that makes me vindictive, then fine. I'm vindictive. But I'm also right. That clip went viral. I became, briefly, a minor internet sensation. Think pieces were written about me. Some called me a hero. Some called me a bitter, vengeful harpy who couldn't accept that her marriage was over. I didn't care. I was past caring what anyone thought. The trial was set for early November. Both Robert and Sarah's lawyers tried to get the charges dismissed. Argued that this was a personal matter being criminalized. That I was abusing the legal system. The judge denied the motions. The defendant admitted to repeatedly entering the plaintiff's property without permission. That is, by definition, trespass. The question for a jury is whether it rises to the level of criminality given the circumstances. That's not for me to decide. So we went to trial. It lasted 3 days. The prosecution presented the evidence methodically. The key that Sarah had. The dates and times she'd entered the house. The photos from that Friday in June. The deposition testimony where she admitted she didn't have my permission. My testimony was the hardest. I had to describe finding them in my bed. Had to talk about the violation I felt, the betrayal. Sarah's lawyer, a slick young man named David Brennan, tried to paint me as a woman scorned, as someone using the legal system for revenge. Isn't it true, Mrs. Mitchell, that you only filed these charges because you're angry about the affair? I'm angry because my home was violated. My marriage was destroyed, yes, but the charges are about the trespassing. About Sarah entering my property without my permission. But you wouldn't have cared if she'd entered your property any other time, would you? You've said yourself she visited regularly. She visited when I was there. When I knew about it. When I invited her. She didn't sneak in to use my home for an affair. So this is about the affair. This is about consent. About someone using my property, my most intimate space, without my knowledge or permission. That's trespassing. The affair is why she did it, but the crime is the trespass itself. Michael testified. Talked about the betrayal. About how Sarah had destroyed their marriage. About how his father had destroyed their family. Robert's lawyer tried to argue that he'd had every right to give Sarah a key to his own house. That I was retroactively withdrawing permission that I'd implicitly given. Did Mrs. Mitchell know Miss Sarah Mitchell had a key to the marital residence? The prosecutor asked Robert on cross-examination. Long pause. No. Did you tell her you'd given Miss Sarah Mitchell a key? No. Why not? It didn't seem important. Or did you not tell your wife because you knew she wouldn't approve of her daughter-in-law having unsupervised access to your home? Objection, Robert's lawyer interjected. Sustained. But the damage was done. The jury had heard it. Sarah testified last. She was composed, mostly. Talked about how the affair had started innocently. How they'd developed feelings. How they'd tried to fight it but couldn't. Why didn't you tell Patricia? The prosecutor asked. I was ashamed. I knew it was wrong. But you kept doing it. Kept entering her house. Kept using her bed. Kept lying to her face every Sunday. Yes. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. And you knew you didn't have her permission to be in that house when she wasn't there? Yes. No further questions. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, I knew. You can always tell by their faces. On the count of criminal trespass, we find the defendant, Sarah Mitchell, guilty. On the count of theft of services, we find the defendant, Sarah Mitchell, guilty. On the count of accessory after the fact, we find the defendant, Robert Mitchell, guilty. Sarah collapsed in her chair, sobbing. Her mother screamed. Robert just closed his eyes. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later. The sentencing hearing was shorter than the trial. Both Robert and Sarah's lawyers argued for leniency. First offense. No prior record. A family matter that got out of hand. Jennifer Caruso argued for accountability. For sending a message that violations of someone's home, of their most intimate space, had consequences. Michael read a victim impact statement. It was brief. My father and my wife destroyed my family. They destroyed my trust. They destroyed my sense of safety and security. I don't know if I'll ever fully recover from this. I don't want revenge. I just want them to understand that actions have consequences. That you can't hurt people and expect to walk away clean. I read one too. For 32 years, I gave everything to my marriage. I was a faithful wife, a devoted mother, a supportive partner. I created a home. Not just a house, but a home. A place that was supposed to be safe. Sacred. Mine. And they violated it in the worst possible way. They didn't just have an affair. They had it in my space, in my bed, in the home I'd built with my time and my energy and my love. And then they expected me to just accept it. To quietly divorce and disappear. I refuse. I refuse to pretend this is okay. I refuse to let them escape consequences. Not for me. For every woman who's been betrayed, who's been told to just get over it, to move on, to not make a scene. This is my scene. This is my justice. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Margaret Huang, looked at Sarah and Robert for a long moment. I've been a judge for 23 years, she said. I've seen a lot of cases. A lot of bad behavior. But there's something particularly cruel about this one. Ms. Mitchell, you were welcomed into this family. You were loved. Trusted. You called Mrs. Mitchell Mom. And you betrayed that in the most intimate way possible. Mr. Mitchell, you betrayed a 32-year marriage, a son who looked up to you, and the woman who built a life with you. And you both did it in a way that violated not just hearts, but the law. She paused. Sarah Mitchell, I sentence you to 18 months in prison, suspended, with 2 years probation. You will complete 200 hours of community service. You will pay restitution to Mrs. Mitchell for the therapy she has required as a result of your actions, an amount to be determined. You are also ordered to have no contact with Mrs. Mitchell or Michael Mitchell for the duration of your probation. Sarah's head dropped to the table. Robert Mitchell, I sentence you to 12 months in prison, suspended, with 2 years probation. You will complete 150 hours of community service. You will also pay restitution. And you will have no contact with your former wife except as required by your divorce proceedings. They weren't going to actual prison. But they had criminal records. They had probation. They had to face what they'd done in the most public way possible. Robert was led away by his lawyer. Sarah was led away by her parents. Michael and I walked out of that courtroom together. How do you feel? He asked me. I thought about it. Hollow. But vindicated. The divorce was finalized in December. I got the house, 70% of the retirement accounts, and half of everything else. Robert's affair was documented in the divorce decree. His wasting of marital assets was documented. His betrayal was made official and legal and permanent. Michael's civil suit against both of them settled out of court. Sarah agreed to pay him a lump sum, not much, but enough to cover his therapy bills and make a symbolic point. Robert did too. Sarah and Robert are not together anymore. The affair didn't survive the daylight. They barely lasted 3 months after the trial before Sarah moved to Vermont to live with an aunt. I heard through the grapevine that Robert is dating someone new, a woman from his office, 20 years his junior. History repeating itself. Michael is in therapy. He's dating again, carefully. Slowly. He has trust issues now, who wouldn't? But he's healing. He moved into his own place a few months ago, a nice apartment downtown. We have dinner every week. We're both rebuilding. As for me? I'm still in my house. My garden is more beautiful than ever. Turns out I had a lot of rage to channel into planting and pruning. I'm still teaching 2nd grade. I have my book club, my friends, my life. I'm not the same woman I was 2 years ago. That woman was trusting. Naive. She believed in fairy tales and forever and the goodness of people she loved. This woman is harder. Sharper. She knows that love isn't always enough. That trust can be weaponized. That sometimes the people you hold closest are the ones who'll hurt you worst. But this woman is also stronger. She knows her worth. She knows she can survive. She knows that when the world tells you to be quiet, to forgive, to move on, you can choose to be loud. You can choose to demand justice. You can choose to not let them get away with it. People still ask me sometimes if I regret it. If I regret pressing charges. If I regret making it public. If I think I went too far. The answer is no. Do I wish my marriage hadn't ended? Of course. Do I wish my son hadn't been betrayed? Every single day. Do I wish I'd never walked into my bedroom that Friday afternoon and seen my worst nightmare come to life? Yes. God, yes. But given that it all happened, given that my husband and my daughter-in-law chose to destroy everything we'd built, no, I don't regret holding them accountable. I think about all the women who catch their husbands cheating and are told to just get over it. To be the bigger person. To think of the family. To forgive and forget and not make waves. I think about all the men who betray their wives and face no real consequences except an expensive divorce and maybe some social awkwardness. I think about all the people who violate trust, who hurt the people who love them, who expect to just move on without facing what they've done. I refuse to be quiet. I refuse to make it easy. I refuse to let them rewrite the story where I was the bitter ex-wife and they were just two people who fell in love. They committed crimes. Multiple crimes. They violated my home, my trust, my marriage. They destroyed my son's life. And they faced consequences. That's not revenge. That's justice. It's been 2 years now since that Friday in June. 2 years since I walked into my bedroom and my world shattered. I still sleep in that room. I bought a new bed, new sheets, new everything. Repainted the walls. Made it mine again. Sometimes I still wake up at 3 a.m. with my heart racing, replaying that moment. The image of them together will never fully leave me. That's the price of betrayal. It carves grooves in your brain, pathways that your thoughts can't help but follow. But most days now, I'm okay. Better than okay, even. I'm rediscovering who I am without being someone's wife. Without building my identity around a man who didn't deserve it. I travel now. Took a trip to Italy last summer, something Robert always said we'd do but never made time for. Turns out, I'm better company for myself than he ever was. I reconnected with old friends, the ones I'd let drift away during my marriage. Started a pottery class. Joined a hiking group. Started writing, just for myself, nothing professional, but it helps to put words to what I've survived. Michael is doing better too. Last month, he introduced me to his girlfriend, Alexis. She's kind, funny, a pediatric nurse. She looked me in the eye when we met and said, I know what he's been through. I'll never hurt him like that. I believe her. Or maybe I've just learned that all you can do is trust until you have a reason not to. The story made the rounds for a while. I was interviewed by a few news outlets, podcast hosts who wanted to hear about the woman who pressed criminal charges against her cheating husband and daughter-in-law. I declined most of them. This isn't entertainment. It's my life. But there was one interview I did, with a journalist from a women's magazine. She asked me what I'd say to other women who were going through betrayal. I thought about it for a long time. I'd say that you get to decide what justice looks like for you, I finally said. Some women can forgive. Some women can move on quietly. Some women can take the high road and never look back. And that's beautiful. That's valid. But if you can't, if you're angry and you want consequences and you refuse to let them off easy, that's valid too. You don't have to be the bigger person. You don't have to make it easy for people who made your life hell. You get to be messy and angry and demanding. You get to take up space. You get to refuse to be quiet. She asked if I was happy now. I'm getting there, I said. Happiness after betrayal isn't a straight line. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Some days I'm fine. Some days I'm furious all over again. But I'm free. I'm not trapped in a marriage built on lies. I'm not wondering what I could have done differently. I know the truth. And the truth, as painful as it is better than living in a beautiful lie. I saw Sarah once, about 6 months ago. Pure chance, we were at the same coffee shop in Hartford. She was with a man I didn't recognize, laughing at something on her phone. She looked different. Harder. Older. The affair aged her in ways youth couldn't erase. She saw me. Our eyes met across the coffee shop. I watched the color drain from her face. I could have left. Could have pretended I hadn't seen her. Could have taken the high road. But I didn't. I walked right up to her table. Patricia, she started, standing up. I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I am. What I did, what we did, it was unforgivable. Yes, I said. It was. I don't expect you to ever forgive me. I want you to know I regret it every day. I destroyed my marriage. My relationship with my family. I lost Michael, who was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I hurt you, who was nothing but kind to me. I regret all of it. I looked at her. This woman who'd called me mom. Who I'd loved. Who I'd welcomed into my family with open arms and an open heart. I hope you do, I said. I hope you regret it every single day for the rest of your life. Not because I'm vindictive, but because maybe if you carry that regret, you'll think twice before you hurt someone else the way you hurt us. I walked away. Didn't look back. The man at her table, boyfriend, maybe, or just a date, looked uncomfortable. I hoped he knew what kind of woman she was. I hoped someone had warned him. But that wasn't my problem anymore. Robert tried to call me on what would have been our 34th wedding anniversary. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. Patty, it's me. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I've been thinking about you today. About us. About everything we had before it all fell apart. I want you to know that I'm sorry. I know I destroyed something good. I know I hurt you and Michael in ways I can never fix. I was selfish and stupid and I threw away the best thing in my life. I hope you're doing okay. I hope you found happiness. You deserve it. You always deserved better than what I gave you. I listened to it once. Then I deleted it. His apology was 30 years too late. And it wasn't even for the affair, not really. It was for getting caught. For facing consequences. For having his comfortable life disrupted. If I'd never walked in that day. If I'd never caught them. He would still be carrying on with Sarah, still lying to me, still telling me he loved me while planning his exit strategy. So no, I didn't need his apology. I didn't need his regret. I needed him to face what he'd done, to carry the weight of his choices, to understand that actions have consequences. The court made sure he did. This is what people don't tell you about betrayal. It doesn't just hurt in the moment. It rewrites your history. Every happy memory I have of my marriage is tainted now. Every vacation, every anniversary, every quiet morning drinking coffee together, I can't look back on any of it without wondering if he was already planning to leave. If he was already thinking about her. If any of it was real. That's the cruelest part. He didn't just take my future. He took my past too. But I'm learning to make peace with that. To accept that my marriage was both real and a lie. That I loved honestly even if he didn't. That my intentions were pure even if his weren't. I was a good wife. A good mother. A good person. His betrayal doesn't change that. It just reveals who he really was underneath the mask he wore for 32 years. Michael asked me recently if I still believe in love. We were at dinner, just the two of us, at our favorite Italian place. He'd been telling me about Alexis, about how cautious he was being, how hard it was to trust again. Do you think it's possible? He asked. To really trust someone again after this? I thought about it. About Robert and Sarah. About all the broken pieces they left behind. I think it's possible, I said carefully. But it's different now. I'll never trust blindly again. I'll never assume that love is enough. I'll never ignore red flags because I want to believe in someone's goodness. That sounds exhausting. It is, I admitted. But it's also safer. I'll never be blindsided like that again. Is that better though? Michael asked. Living in constant vigilance? I don't know, I said honestly. But I know I can't go back to who I was. That woman is gone. Maybe that's sad. Maybe it's a loss. But maybe it's also evolution. He nodded slowly. I keep thinking about what Dad said. About not feeling alive for years. About Sarah making him feel young again. And I'm angry that he gets to have that narrative. That he gets to be the man who fell in love, who couldn't help himself, who was just following his heart. When really, he was just a middle-aged man afraid of getting old who threw away his family for an ego boost. You're right, I said. That's exactly what it was. Do you think he knows that? I think he's starting to. The truth is, I don't know if Robert really regrets what he did. I don't know if Sarah does either. I know they regret getting caught. I know they regret the consequences. But do they regret the betrayal itself? Do they lie awake at night thinking about the people they hurt? I'll never know. And I've made peace with that too. Their internal lives aren't my concern anymore. Their guilt or lack thereof isn't my problem. I did what I needed to do to survive this. I fought back. I demanded justice. I refused to be a silent victim. And now I'm moving forward. Someone asked me at a dinner party last month. A new friend who didn't know the whole story, why I wasn't dating. You're attractive, she said, a little wine-drunk and overfamiliar. Smart. Independent. Why are you single? Because I choose to be, I said simply. Don't you want to find love again? I considered the question. Did I? Once upon a time, I would have said yes immediately. Love was the goal. Partnership was the dream. Growing old with someone was the ideal. But now? Maybe someday, I said. But right now, I'm focusing on loving myself. On rebuilding the life I want. On discovering who I am outside of being someone's wife. And that's enough. She looked at me with pity. That sounds lonely. It's not, I said. And I meant it. It's peaceful. I think that's the part of this story that surprises people the most. They expect me to be bitter. Angry. Desperate to find someone new to prove Robert wrong, to show him I'm still desirable, still lovable. But I don't need to prove anything to him. I don't need his validation anymore. I'm 58 years old. I've been betrayed in the worst way possible. I've been through a nightmare divorce and a public trial. I've had to rebuild my sense of self from the ground up. And you know what? I'm okay. Better than okay. I'm free. I don't have to worry about late nights and unexplained absences. I don't have to check phones or monitor credit cards or wonder if I'm being lied to. I don't have to perform the role of the perfect wife for someone who doesn't appreciate it. I get to be myself. Fully. Completely. Without apology. And that, after everything, feels like a victory.